81% of people are considering leaving their job this year. Why do you think that is?
I research this topic day in, day out. Essentially, Joe, people aren't just looking for work anymore. They're looking to...
Daisy, welcome to the pod.
Yes, I'm so excited. It's the first time I'm a guest this year, so I'm really, really excited.
Yes, you are normally the one doing the interviewing. We've swapped seats. I much prefer this side, so looking forward to the conversation. I want to kick off. I've stolen a statistic from your LinkedIn profile that says 81% of people are considering leaving their job this year. Why do you think that is?
Good question. Well, data doesn't lie, so I don't think I know it. I research this topic day in, day out, not just for my LinkedIn posts, but also for my podcast guests who are living and breathing this industry. Essentially, Joe, people aren't just looking for work anymore. They're looking to better their lives. More than ever, people are like trying mindset hacks and to be more productive and to be the healthiest version of themselves. So it's only natural that it's now spilled into the world of work because that's where we spend 8+ hours a day, right? And yeah, with AI, technology, layoffs, so whole departments are being put on one person who's left behind. Work feels really, really hard at the moment. So burnout is at an all-time high at the moment. There's been studies by McKinsey, Forbes, Capstar, Gallup, the famous Gallup studies. Like everyone's looked into it, and there's so much data out there to prove that like almost all of us are burnt out essentially in corporate. Layoffs and hiring freezes and restructures are happening, I feel like, every single week. So it's left people feeling like they're disposable and just really, really uncertain about the job market. And a lot of people feel like that their jobs don't have any impact. I just found out why this is from a podcast guest I had recently. And yeah, it was a really interesting take. But essentially it's those three things. So burnout is an all-time high, all the restructures and layoffs, and the fact that we feel like our work doesn't actually make any impact.
Awesome. So there's a ton of things we can dive into there. And I know a lot of your content is about what companies can do from like a top-down culture approach. I'm personally really interested in what can an individual do. So if I'm an employee or, a person in my day-to-day at work, what can I do? So let's dissect those areas. Maybe we could start with burnout. So what is burnout? How do I know when I'm approaching burnout, and how can I avoid it?
Gosh, do we have enough time? Essentially, yeah, I spoke to a burnout coach on my podcast about this. She actually went through every single stage of what burnout looks like up until autoimmune diseases, heart attacks, etc. It gets really bad if you just leave it alone. But essentially what burnout looks like is we've kind of normalized being tired all the time, and we just say, oh, it's adult life. We're just tired 24/7. It's not normal to be exhausted all the time. So actually the first stage of burnout, which is the one you can kind of reverse, is just waking up and constantly being tired. And then of course what comes from that is the predecessor, which is the disrupted sleep. So if you have these first symptoms, you should really look at what's disrupting my sleep. Have I got a busy mind? Why am I tired all the time, regardless of taking supplements? I don't know, going on walks, like being young, right? What's wrong with me? So that's the answer to the first question. And what was the second question?
So how can we avoid burning out at work?
Good question. Number one, I would say to detach your identity from your job. I feel like our biggest issue right now is that we've made work our identities. So if I asked you at a networking event, like, Joe, what do you do? You would say...
I would say I'm the founder of a company called Purple, and then I would go into what Purple does and why we do it.
Yeah, so the answer wasn't anything to do about your character. Like, do you like gardening? Are you a gamer? Are you a dog dad? Like, you didn't say anything about you as a person. We automatically say something about work, and we really attach our self-worth. Even though if we say, no, we don't, work's just work. Yes, we do. A lot of us do. Especially our achievements, the salary, our status. So actually detaching your identity from work. So your role is what you do, it's not what you are. And just basically seeing it as transactional instead of like, oh, this job is everything. Like it's my income, it's my identity, it's life or death. Because if you do that and anything happens with that job, you're screwed pretty much. And also just look within yourself. And if you are feeling tired, if your sleep is disrupted, if you're snapping at people, that's another big indication that you're burnt out as well. You really need to see where you're not drawing boundaries, because you're clearly overstepping the boundaries, especially if you're snapping, if you're getting frustrated, if you're angry. That's when your boundary's being crossed, whether it's your colleagues just interrupting you 24/7, Slack popping up and disrupting your day, your boss just watching over your shoulder. It can be as heavy as that, or it can be even like tiny little things that are annoying you, but you need to just essentially find someone you trust at work, whether it's a colleague or your boss or HR or a wellness person, and just address that your boundaries are being crossed and you really need to like say no or like delegate some things, because we're not machines, we're human. We're trying to keep up with machines, and that's the only way you can kind of start fighting burnout.
How would you balance that with, so I think it was on your LinkedIn the other day, you did a survey about like, what does workplace happiness look like for you, or maybe what's the most impactful out of a list of things? And I voted in it, and I voted for meaningful work. That's the thing for me, which I think gives me a lot of purpose in life and maybe makes me feel happy while I'm working. How do you balance being immersed in work, finding it meaningful and engaging, with then like setting those boundaries and removing it from your identity?
That is the $1,000,000 question, because you can be passionate about what you do and you can like your colleagues as well, right? So it's really, really tricky. And we spend so many hours in the day. Something I'm still trying to balance, but essentially it's just understanding that taking breaks is really, really productive. So like I said before in a conversation, which I want to touch on now, the fact that work doesn't feel like it's making a lot of impact. So we can enjoy it. Like our work's very virtual, right? It's very digital. So this is what happens with people like us, Joe, is that work is meaningful, but it feels like it's never ending. It feels like we shut our laptops off, but we could easily open it again at 10 p.m., 11 p.m. and just do that one quick email. Or, oh gosh, the to-do list is like never ending. And there is a scientific reason for this, actually. So I spoke to Ahad, who was a podcast guest. He's a Stoic who believes that work should be transactional and you should remove your identity away from it. And essentially, he mentioned that there was a study, a famous one from IKEA, which I can send across to you as well. And they looked into the science of work. And basically they said that we're, as humans, we're used to tangible results, like making things like DIY. That's why we love it. Cooking, like an experience like this, where it's like start to finish, you actually build something tangible. And because UX work, project manager work, IT work, recruiters, it's all done with our minds and with a laptop or a phone. We don't have physical end results. So we always feel like we need to do more, we need to continue, we need to keep going, we're not doing enough, even though we're working. I know you do. You're also working a lot. I'm working a lot. So it does matter to be inspired to love what you do. But sometimes, particularly in this day and age, with that IKEA study that was done a few years ago, we really need to have tangible physical stuff to prove that like, oh, this task is done. We need to continue. And a way that you can kind of make work more meaningful, which is a really nice, easy way. It's so easy to know if you do this, but to have a physical to-do list, like literally just handwrite all the tasks for the day, like the project and stuff, and then literally cross it out. It's been proven to make you slightly happier with your like tasks and make you feel motivated at work, like 20% or something like this. So you can make digital work more physical by having post-it notes, by if you have meetings, literally bring a poster, like an A3 piece of paper to the meeting and actually brainstorm and draw together and have a tangible outcome of the meeting. It's been proven to make people feel happier, feel more motivated, feel good about their work. That was essentially my answer. I hope that made sense. I don't know if you want me to clarify anything else.
That makes a ton of sense. Thing around not physically making anything like that. That is so interesting. I've always found for me, like doing digital work, layering on top of that physical exercise makes such a massive difference for me. But like I hadn't thought about the, I guess, evolutionary reasons for like why that may be the case. So super interesting. Okay, so we touched on burnout. Another thing you mentioned at the start was layoffs.
Mm.
Something which has either affected most people in the last few years, or the uncertainty, even if you haven't been laid off, is probably something you feel in your role. Like, is my role secure?
Mm.
What have you learned about this? How can we approach either layoffs or the uncertainty of like business performance and not knowing if your role's secure?
Gosh, I feel so guilty and bad for the people who've been laid off, but the poor people who stay, the people who have been laid off say like, oh, I wish I was one of the ones who was kept on. But gosh, they're the ones who get all of the pressure. Just they feel so insecure, so unstable. They get the whole department's work that everyone that's been laid off on their shoulders. It just feels horrible and never ending. So I've been laid off 3 times. I'm not sure how many times you've been laid off, and been through a bankruptcy as well. Hence, I started looking into more about the root causes and the well-being of people and what people can actually do instead of relying on work, because I'm a recruiter. I love what I do. I've loved what I've done for the last 10 years. But as you know, Joe, with like recruitment itself is the instability of it. So roles get cancelled, especially if you work in agency, your clients can pull out, the candidate can pull out. Contracts have been retracted, whole departments have been like laid off and stuff, and you still have to continue. So even recruitment itself, like the industry, was taking its toll on me. And I just thought, Jesus, someone needs to take action and actually help companies like with the root cause and like employees find happiness again, essentially, right? So with back to your question, with people who've been laid off or are the last one standing at a company, it is completely normal to feel scared, insecure, just completely isolated from the situation and feeling like you're disposable. I think understanding that and processing your emotions first before you take any action spontaneously is really, really important. I think with every person I've spoken to on the podcast who's in wellness or neuroscience or psychologists as well, they all say process your emotions. Do not put them in the bin. Don't put them on the side. Just go through what you're going through. It will be temporary, and then take action. The first thing I would do is process the emotions. And then I would just see what skills do I have, like 3 skills that are non-disposable, essentially. So we know that stakeholder management, communication, networking is a huge, huge skill. Collaboration, talking to your team, getting on everyone's level, understanding other people is a huge skill as well. And I think sales is a really underrated skill, but sales is a really easy skill to learn if you don't know it already, but you can really adjust that to any scenario. You can't just use it in one department, just at work. You can use sales in your private life as well. You can use it negotiating for a phone contract, etc. Like, it's a really, really valuable skill to use. And there's many skills like that, like AI, analytics, etc. You can search on ChatGPT, or you can look on Google as well what the non-disposable skills are. And then also check 3 skills that you don't have. So for example, if you are living under a rock and blissfully unaware of AI, why? Because that's the future. You really need to get on board with that. And there's plenty of other things you can learn, like social media, digital marketing, etc. That even Canva. Canva is a great skill to have as a professional. And you just need to kind of get on board and become more adaptable, because if you're stubborn, if you're kind of set in your own way and you're not willing to be open-minded and learn new things, you're going to be left behind, essentially. So that would be the top priorities if I was laid off or the last one standing at a company.
Yeah, Canva is an absolute cheat code, by the way. Like, you can
Yeah.
become a graphic designer and marketer overnight if you learn how to be good at Canva.
Yeah.
I'm not a design person at all, and I've managed to design all the things for my business myself. Closely related to, I guess, on the uncertainty side, so particularly for those people who are left in the organizations and maybe not feeling good and feeling unsure, is feeling passionate about your work, right? Like, that's the inverse. If you lost passion for your work, or you're not enjoying what you're doing, you're not feeling happy in your day to day, what do the experts tell us are the next steps to do here? I expect one of them might be to change jobs. If you can't change jobs, what can you do within that company?
Oh gosh. Well, try not to change your job so quickly. So I did a whole series on LinkedIn last year about how to fall in love with your job again. I found 12 reasons, 12 hacks as to what you can do to fall in love with your job again. One was based of a Harvard study. They basically looked at, they interviewed a lot of people who were in like corporate jobs and understood like what made them happy and what didn't. And the highest scoring was having friends at work, which sounds crazy because we love to work abroad. We love to work from home. We love not to go to the office, but having even a virtual friend or having like an accountability buddy. I know they do that at Apple. They kind of set people up as buddies in the beginning of their career journeys. Just having someone you trust and rely on at work makes a ton of difference with your well-being. So actually just, going out there and not necessarily going to the office, but just, I tried this, sending Teams or Slack messages, just like, hey, morning, hope you're enjoying your coffee, like just being polite and being nice to people in your team. Like people really, really appreciate it because there's a loneliness pandemic clearly at the moment. And we're very social, tribal beings. Like that will never be taken away from us. So having friends at work has been proven to satisfy us and make us happy. And more than salary, more than the friends, more than a permanent contract. The top thing has been recognition that makes people feel happy. So if you are feeling unfulfilled or if you're like, oh, this is rubbish, I just want to leave, just want to quit tomorrow, think about why you're not being recognized for your work. Like, can you speak up more in meetings? Can you make your voice heard when you're speaking in meetings? Talk to your team leader or your boss and say, hey, like, I really need validation, whether it's privately or on Slack, like singing my praises, saying like, oh, Joe, because you did this, the team can now go to an offsite. Joe, because you did this, we're going to make 10% revenue. Like that just already makes you feel so appreciated. And it's something, a lot of companies and leaders are missing, just appreciating their team and their colleagues. So essentially recognition has been like, and having friends at work has been like the ultimate hacks on finding purpose and passion at work.
One thing I found on that is like giving validation to others. Also, it makes you feel good, but you kind of get that energy back, right? If you're constantly telling other people the things they're doing well and when they've done a good job and like how their work has impacted you. I don't know the stats here, but I feel like they're a lot more likely then to tell you when you've done the same thing and when your work has been impactful, right? So there's probably a double win there to start celebrating others, and that energy will, I think, is a multiplier there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Final question then. You've interviewed over 60 experts, probably even more by the time this has gone out. I would love to know what's the most impactful advice or hacks that you've learned from the podcast that has been, a big impact on your own life.
Super good question. I've mentioned two already. I had the guest where he explained that work has to be tangible. I've started like literally writing notes, writing things on paper, brainstorming without my phone, without ChatGPT. It's really changed how I work. It just makes me feel like I'm achieving stuff. Also, another guest I had, Emily Cook, who has a team of neuroscientists. She is all about flow state, hyperfocus state. She basically taught me something that changed my life, and she goes through it in detail in the whole episode, that humans can only hyperfocus. So hyperfocus, Joe, is when you're like, when you're on your laptop or your phone, everything around you is blurry. You're just like looking at that thing and time is going by. It's just flying. We can only achieve that state in 90 and 120 minutes. So 8 hours a day, we are trying to like pull this even more, and it's just not possible. We cannot focus for 8 hours a day. So just getting the validation from like neuroscience that we can only focus in these short periods of time, and you can activate it twice a day. So in the morning and in the afternoon, it was super validating because I feel like we're all pushing through trying to focus after 90 minutes, and we just push through the tiredness. And this is why we get burnt out, because we feel like, why am I so lazy? Like, why can't I just be productive every hour of the day? So I felt like that was an incredible finding. I feel like that really, hopefully that helps you, Joe, as well, to realize that we're not machines. We can't focus every hour of the day. And workplaces need to understand this and maybe tailor our days a bit differently. So that was a really cool finding as well.
Awesome. I'm going to listen to that episode after this because
Yes,
I'm
it's out
so
next week.
next week. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm so productive in the mornings. My afternoons are terrible. Like it's a day of two halves every single day. So maybe that will help me understand myself a little more. Let's link both of those episodes down below. People can go watch them. Daisy, thanks for joining me.
Yes, thank you so much. I know it's not really recruitment related, but I hope people have learned one or two things today.